Welcome back to Life Unlimited. I'm Nora Oliver, and today we're diving into a crucial health topic that affects millions of people worldwide: diabetes. Whether you or a loved one have been diagnosed or you're just looking to take control of your health, understanding diabetes is the first step towards managing it effectively. Diabetes is a condition that impacts how your body processes sugar, and if left unmanaged, it can lead to serious health complications. But the good news is that the right knowledge, lifestyle changes, and support is possible to live a full and healthy life. Joining me today is an expert in the field, Kirsten Ward. She is a certified diabetes educator and registered exercise physiologist with the American College of Sports Medicine, dedicated to transforming the lives of those at risk for or living with diabetes. She began her career in diabetes management at the Joslin Clinic, a renewed Boston hospital specializing in outpatient care for individuals with diabetes. She currently works with the medical device company, teaching insulin pump therapy to both patients and providers, and has her own business as a diabetes consultant coach. She's passionate about leading by example. Kirsten practices what she preaches. She has completed 13 marathons, 6 of them being the Boston Marathon. Welcome, Kirsten. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me, Nora.
It's so good to have you here. Can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background in diabetes world?
Sure, absolutely. So I got into the diabetes field when I started working at the Joslin Clinic in Boston. Prior to that, I was a personal trainer, and then I went back for my master's degree at UMass Amherst, so not too far from Boston, and have my master's in exercise science. So studying exercise physiology, and then at Joslin Clinic is where I received my diabetes education and expertise, and from there went into medical devices of various kinds, from injectables to now insulin pump therapy, and then have my private practice.
That's incredible. Wow, that's a very inspiring background.
Thank you.
That's great. So what inspired you to be a diabetes educator?
In some respects, I consider it potluck in the sense that I fell into the career in some respects, but in other ways, I was very pragmatic, and I knew I wanted to work at the Joslin Clinic. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know the first thing about like what's a normal blood sugar. And so I was kind of like your viewers, which was, I knew nothing. All of a sudden when you get diagnosed, it is a crash course in so many different terminologies, medications. It's overwhelming. That's where I was, and that's sort of some of the information and background that I take when working with my patients and my clients, is that I can understand how overwhelming it can be. I really wanted to work at the Joslin Clinic because I knew I wanted to do something that had a bigger impact for my clients, not just in a personal training gym atmosphere. And later on, I actually had an uncle that got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And he has since passed, but it was many of the misconceptions that he had, which was, oh, I don't have any family history of type 2. Even though I'm overweight, I won't get it because there's no family history. So, you know, we can talk about some of those misconceptions. But yeah, so it has touched me personally as well in my family.
So what is diabetes?
Great question. So diabetes is a dysfunction of the pancreas. So the pancreas secretes a lot of hormones. And to not get into too much physiology to bore our viewers, but to really understand that when we eat food, we need to transfer that food into a source that our body can use. Sort of like when I go to Europe and I need to transfer my dollars into euros. Our body does that, and it does all these chemical equations, and then insulin is secreted. Insulin's like a key to unlock the door and let the glucose, the food that we eat, get into our cells, and glucose is gas, it's energy for our body. It's what we use as one of our fuel sources to run our bodies, to think, to move, everything. So we need to be able to get that glucose from our bloodstream into our muscle cells. And insulin is that key, and insulin is secreted from the pancreas. So,
So what is pre-diabetes?
Great question. Pre-diabetes is the stage that they talk about prior to getting the actual diagnosis of diabetes. So we can talk about how we diagnose diabetes. In some respects, I really think saying prediabetes is a disservice to our patients. And when I'm speaking to a patient that's kind of on this verge of this cliff, almost tipping over to having full-blown diabetes, I say to them, listen, I'm either pregnant or I'm not pregnant.
Good point.
I can't,
Right.
There's one or the other.
Right. It's not like you can say you're pre-diabetes and then it can go away.
Yes, we can sometimes
maybe
reverse.
for type 2?
For type 2, we can kind of reverse it. And if we are at that pre-diabetes stage, we can kind of set the clock back. But I feel like it's a disservice to our patients because it's sort of like, well, you haven't had a heart attack yet, so just start exercising and eating better. And when you get a heart attack, then we'll put you on these other medications. And I was like, why do you want to wait for the heart attack to happen?
Right. So what is juvenile diabetes?
Juvenile diabetes is a term that we used to use. We don't use it anymore.
Oh.
We actually say type 1 and type 2. So again, you either have type 1 or type 2. They're different. Still talking about what diabetes is. Type 1 is an autoimmune dysfunction. It's a very quick onset where usually happens within about 30 to 60 days that you get diagnosed.
Wow.
Where the pancreas completely stops producing insulin. It's a massive destruction to the pancreas, which we call the beta cells that make insulin. They don't make insulin anymore. These people always need to be on insulin injections to live, to survive. And prior to 1920, when insulin was discovered, people died with type 1. They did not live. They lived very short lives.
Wow.
So type 1 autoimmune, meaning the body self-attacks itself, it attacks the pancreas, no more insulin produced. It can happen at any age of our life. It usually happens within the first 21 years, and that's why we used to call it juvenile. But now we see 30-year-olds, 40, 50, 60-year-olds diagnosed with type 1. And so many of my patients were misdiagnosed as type 2 when they really had type 1 because they were older when they got the diagnosis. Right? So we see misdiagnosis a lot with our adults diagnosed with type 1. Type 2 is different. Type 2 is a slower onset. There's obviously family history, lifestyle modification. So if we're heavier, if we're less active, if we're sedentary, we have a higher risk. If we have family history, we have a higher risk. So type 2 is a slow degradation of those pancreas beta cells.
Wow.
Where at diagnosis of type 2, 50% of that pancreas is already not producing insulin. 50% of the pancreas is dead.
Wow.
And so these people can start with pills, oral agents, because those oral agents, those pills, need some of the pancreas, some of the beta cells working. And then every year that you have diabetes and don't lose weight, are more sedentary, more and more of the pancreas gets kind of died off and killed off. And then you have to go from pills or oral agents to injections. So you switch your therapy
More
from
serious.
pills and you progress to needing injectable medications, maybe insulin.
Wow. So what are some misconceptions of diabetes?
One of the major misconceptions is that I change my type. So I start with type 2, I start with my pills, and then I go to need insulin, and now I've switched from type 2 to type 1. Nope, you always have type 1, type 2, and we also have other variants of diabetes, gestational, we have pancreatectomies that cause diabetes, so there's others, but type 1 and type 2 are the most common. 90% of the population has type 2.
Wow, and you can be tested for all of them?
You can, yes, so as far as how we diagnose and how we test, usually the doctor will do a fasting blood glucose test when you go in to do your general physical exams, which is why we want you to go to the doctor every year for your general wellness visits.
Right, it's important.
So they'll do the fasting, meaning they'll have you not eat in the morning, get a blood test, and they'll look and see what your blood sugar is in the morning. So just so the audience knows, we want to make sure that your fasting blood sugar is less than 100 when you wake up in the morning. You're good. If it's starting to creep up above 100, then you're starting to go into that pre-diabetes phase that we talk about. You're starting to have blood glucose issues.
Wow.
So type 1, type 2, type 1 autoimmune, type 2 lifestyle, sedentary behavior.
Very different.
Very different. It's a type 2 slow degradation of the beta cells. Think about type 2 as, if I'm a smaller woman, right, in terms of my body habitus, my size. If I weighed an extra 50, 100 pounds, my body needs to produce 100 extra pounds of insulin every day, 24/7. And after doing that for so many years, it's fatigued, it's exhausted working 24/7. It says, I'm kaput and done.
Wow.
I like
that's
using
well
analogies.
Explained. No, I like that.
Because it helps people.
Is one worse than the other?
Great question. No, it's all based on the A1C test. The A1C is a blood glucose test that we look at the past 3 months of what your average blood sugar has been, the history. So it's a retrospective look back and see how have your blood sugars been for the past 3 months. So if the A1C is up high, 10, 12%, it causes potential complications, blindness, neuropathies, meaning your hands and feet go numb, kidney issues. So all these different complications, people have amputations, they have sores that don't heal well.
And that can happen
Type
Type
1 or 2, it's based on the A1C. So you can have somebody with type 1 diabetes, meaning they're on insulin 24/7, but their A1C, the goal is 7% or lower, or 6.5%, and that target is the goal, regardless of type 1 or type 2. So you can have somebody that's on insulin 24/7, and their A1C is great. They'll have less risk for complications, somebody type 2, an A1C of 10, 12%. So it's based on your blood glucose control, not based on your therapy, not based on your type.
Wow.
So that's one of the biggest misconceptions is between type 1 and type 2 and which one is worse. You don't switch from type 1 to type 2. You have that type for
so it's not like you can get type 2 and then
switch
a couple years you get type 1.
Correct. You just change your therapy. You just change your medications that you need.
Right. And you don't get like injections. I mean, you don't get to choose like which one. It's based on whatever it's prescribed, based on where you are when you're tested.
So one of the things is that most people, I mean, the majority of people have type 2 and are on pills, and they go to see a primary care physician for their care. They don't go to an endocrinologist, which specializes in diabetes.
Right.
And part of the reason is because there's so few endocrinologists. It's hard to get an appointment. You could wait 6 months to get an appointment for an endocrinologist. And so there's more primary care that are just giving the oral agents. And most physicians, endocrinologists and primary care, are not quick or fast enough in changing the therapies and aggressive enough would be my particular critique as a diabetes educator. It's very well documented, the inertia of physicians, that one pill could maybe lower your A1C 1%, but 2 pills then maybe 0.5%. So if your A1C is up at 10 and you're not going to make some lifestyle modifications, you really need to go to injections quickly.
Right.
Right?
Wow.
And there's different kinds of injectables besides insulin, but again, you want to get that A1C down, whether it's with injections or with pills. You've got to do what you need to do to get blood sugars down.
Right, yeah. So what are the key lifestyle changes that someone should maybe make regarding diabetes?
Yes. Well, it's one of the hardest ones is nutrition. And it doesn't mean you have to get rid of sweets, because that's one of the other myths, is that you can't eat sugar or you can't have your chocolate cake on your birthday or whatever it may be. But it's swapping out foods so that you're not eating so much of the white foods, white bread, white sugar, think about pasta, potatoes, rice, all the things that we love, all the sweets. And so we really want to try to eat more vegetables. So think about 50% of your plate to 75% of that plate being vegetables. And corn and peas are not vegetables. Unfortunately, they might be yummy. Most people are like, yeah, I love corn.
Yeah.
But it's starch.
Corn is on everything, yeah.
Corn is a starch, exactly. Green peas are a starch, so you want to stay away from those. They're very starchy.
Wow, I never thought peas.
Yeah, those small little green peas, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But if you get the peas on like the pea pod or green beans, different. There's more fiber, so it's not going to raise the blood glucose as much. So more
basically
vegetables.
eat healthier.
Eat healthier.
Better choices.
And also start to move more.
Yeah.
If you can lose anywhere between 5 to 10% of your weight,
Fat. Yeah.
and start moving more. I always say to patients when they're coming to me and they want advice on exercise, walk every day.
Right.
30
That's
minutes.
the simplest way.
It's the
Instead
easiest.
of elevators, take the stairs. Instead of
Exactly.
you know.
Park your car further away. Take those extra steps. Right now, this
Right.
moment, it might not add up, but over a year, it will be several pounds.
Big difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't, where it says put the shopping cart back here, don't put it back there. Take it back to the store.
Yep.
All those little things. Think about all the things
It
that
adds
we've
up.
stopped
I
doing.
pay attention to that.
From
Yep.
shoveling snow to mowing our lawns. We've stopped adding all these activities.
We're not as active, right? We have drive-throughs. We can't even walk inside a restaurant to get food.
Exactly.
We sit in our cars. I mean, that's not being active.
Right.
We work
exactly.
from the house, you know,
We
remote.
sit at our
Like
desk.
Exactly. We're in school all day. We're sitting. We come home. We sit. We're not so active anymore, especially during the cold weathers. We're just
Especially here in Boston. It's challenging with the ice and snow, but a lot of malls are open early in the morning.
Yes.
So free walking places where it's
clean
safe.
your house.
Clean
That's
your
my best
house.
activity. I
Yes.
clean so often. I'm up. My house is clean. I feel better.
And you know what I do is, you know how most people clean with a mop, but I don't like the lines that it leaves, so I actually clean on my hands and knees, like the old-fashioned way to clean it, and that's a lot of work.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I clean a lot, and mostly because I know it keeps me active, especially in the winter. I can't really go too far, and I'm a single mom, so having to take care of 3 kids, it's hard to leave the house. So there's always ways
Always.
to find what you can do, or get a working station, like standing station.
Exactly. I have a
So you're
standing
up,
desk
you're
where you,
moving. Yep.
standing desk, sitting desk, so you have that option to do both. They have
Exactly.
those little sort of mini treadmills or Stairmasters. Even if you have knee or hip issues, you can get one of those little bike pedalers. You can get them on Amazon where you can use it for your arms or your feet underneath your desk.
Yeah, I feel like there's always answers, but we have to look for it, and don't just wait.
We have to start to become more active in terms of we're eating so many calories, but we're not expending those.
Yep.
Right?
body
So
has
that's,
to
and
move.
then it's not just the biggest challenge I think for our patients is they're like, I'm eating less and I'm moving more and I'm still not losing weight. And so we used to always say, move more, eat less. But the reality is it's also the types of foods and when we eat, because we're learning so much about the gut flora and how that plays a role in losing weight.
It's so very important. I actually had someone here last week that we discussed nutrition. We talked about leaky gut and how important that is, right, to take care of your gut, eating healthy, right?
Right.
Choosing the right foods for yourself.
Right.
And we also talked about the quality of your water as well, because these days, many people don't know where your water is coming from.
And the
How is it
Woburn
being
water
cleaned?
isn't always the best. I gotta
Exactly.
say.
I know. Yes, we've had some issues here
Yeah.
itself, right? You run into issues, and it takes a while to get it at a proper state level, cleanliness. But there's always options, like we just said, with the food and the water. There's good quality. There's filters.
Exactly.
But many people don't think about the fact that most of our body is made of water. I think that
It's
says
so
a lot.
important
So
to
you could be
hydrate.
eating well, but you're just having crappy water.
Exactly.
And that affects you. Right? There's lots of chemicals in that.
Absolutely. And it also affects like how you think. If you're dehydrated, your brain
absolutely.
isn't working as well. So it's so important for the brain to be hydrated.
Exactly. So what are some common challenges that people face in managing diabetes, and how can they overcome them?
Well, I think part of the challenge is, not feeling like it's your fault. And yes, there might be some responsibility in like, oh, I've let myself gain weight or be sedentary, but to really kind of be like, well, right now I know, now I'm learning and I'm being proactive. I've been working with some other of my clients that like, I just never had anybody explain this to me in a way that made sense. right? So
Well, like
just,
you said, there's not that many endocrinologists,
right,
So if you're not having those talks, you feel lost and confused.
right.
But I'm assuming, there's people like you, right?
Exactly.
That they can go to a diabetes educator. I'm sure there's support groups as well.
There's lots of support groups on Facebook groups as well. So if you're limited on your income, there's so much you can find online. I'm always careful about what you find on Facebook chat groups because some of the information isn't right or is a little bit off base. So making sure that you're getting that right information, shows like this one, like yours, to be able to provide, like even go to the one that you had the previous speaker on nutrition, because I'm sure she had a wealth of information.
She can absolutely help with all of this, especially
Exactly.
don't let yourself go too far out.
Right.
If you can prevent something more serious, this is your life.
And I
Take it
think the
seriously.
biggest challenge is really like you have to take a proactive role in your health, because if your A1C is above 7, don't just be like, oh, it's okay. If my doctor says it's okay, it's at 8. I'm telling you that 7 is the goal
Pretty
at
high.
minimum. Like what I'm saying, like you have to get below 7. So you don't want that A1C to be high. If you don't know what it is, you need to find out. You look at your lab results. Call your doctor's office, get some new labs. So you really have to be very proactive in your own healthcare nowadays. And that's, I say, one of the
your
biggest
life
challenges.
in general. Like you have to about everything. I mean, it's
Yep.
up to you,
Right.
So how does stress impact blood sugar, and what are some strategies to manage stress effectively?
Well, to manage stress, meditation, relaxation, breathing exercises, getting a massage is one of my favorites. Anything that, like exercise, whatever you need to be able
works for
to
you.
works for you. One of the things that I think culturally that has happened is that we manage our stress with food or with drugs, alcohol.
Yep.
So we really need to find other ways to manage our stress that's not using a substance, whether it's food or any kind of alcohol, drugs, etc. So really starting to look at, okay, well, there's tons of support groups to go to.
Right.
In managing your stress, maybe it's a friend that also wants to partner with you, right? Make sure that friend is a really good buddy that's not going to self-sabotage and sabotage you.
Right.
So, but stress can really have an impact on the blood sugars. There's probably a good 42 factors that we know that can increase or decrease your blood glucose levels.
Wow.
That we probably haven't even identified some. So stress can really raise,
So it can really impact.
raise your blood glucose levels. Caffeine can raise your blood sugars, even if it's
Really?
black coffee with no milk or sugar.
Alcohol, drugs.
Alcohol can lower it, exactly. It can raise it, depends upon what kind of alcohol you're having. So many factors to impact your blood glucose levels. This is why continuous glucose monitors are so helpful for people now.
Wow.
Which are they're not new on the market, but most people with diabetes are starting to use some CGM, some continuous glucose monitor.
That's great. So what are some new advances in diabetes care management?
Well, the biggest thing I would say for type 1 is that the insulin pumps are now communicating to the CGMs and vice versa, so that when the blood sugars are going up, more insulin is secreted. When the blood sugars are going down, less insulin is secreted or stopped completely to prevent low blood sugars. So there is actually every year new recommendations from the American Diabetes Association, and we have new guidelines as healthcare providers. And the majority of people with type 1, 60% of them are probably not on an AID, an automated insulin delivery system.
Wow.
And it is now the standard of care that every person that has type 1 diabetes and is on insulin 24/7, you could be type 2 on insulin 24/7, should be on an AID, meaning a pump and a CGM communicating to each other.
Wow. So are there any exciting developments on the horizon on diabetes treatments?
Well, everybody's been wondering, like, when are we going to be able to have a pancreatic transplant that's going to work? That hasn't really come to fruition. The pancreas is a very sort of flimsy organ, and I'm sure they're doing lots of research, but just nothing has come to fruition. Right now, what we've got are the AID systems And that's the best that we have.
And there's no cure.
Right
Other than transplants.
now, and the
possibly.
transplants can stick or not work, and then you're on rejection meds for the rest of your life to get a transplant, right? Any transplant, you need rejection meds or anti-rejection meds. So that's a very personal conversation with your physician.
Wow.
And whether or not you're a candidate and whether or not there is, the availability. So right now, even though, it's a lifelong situation in terms of you have diabetes for your life, as for type 1 and type 2, I've had people that I've worked with that have reversed their diabetes so that they're off their medications and using diet and exercise to control their blood sugars.
Nice.
So it's possible with type 2.
Type 2 though, right?
It's very different
Right.
if you do that early enough. But if you were diagnosed with cancer, you're going through cancer treatments and chemo treatments, and we don't know the success sometimes depending on the cancer. We have the resources, we have the devices, we have the medical technology to help you manage your blood glucose levels so that no complications have to occur.
Wow. I mean, that's good. That's good to know that there's help. There's
Right.
support with all the different products out there.
Right.
So where can people find reliable information to support and managing their diabetes?
Well, American Diabetes Association is a great organization that has a lot of information there. You can also go to the CDC, Center for Disease Control has things as well. And then obviously you can look me up. You can always reach out to me. I have classes, whether people want to do in groups or private. It's dependent upon what works for them.
That's awesome. That was going to be my next question. Where can people find you, or how can they reach out to you for your services?
Yeah, so actually we've developed a website for this particular show. So it's Diabetes Coach Woburn. So people can go there. They can see my phone number. They can reach out to me that way, or just send a quick little email.
Oh, that's awesome, and that's great. How can friends and family best support each other for someone that's living, whether they're living with them or they have diabetes?
Yeah, so it's very challenging as a family member not to be what we call the diabetes police, where you're like, you should do this, you can't eat sugar or whatever. And so it's really having a conversation with the person that has diabetes, and for everybody to be like, okay, this is the support I need. So you, the person that's living with diabetes, should really say, this is how I'd like to receive the information or feedback, or how I need support from you. So being clear on what is supportive versus what's not supportive.
So educate your family.
Educate your family, like how do you like to receive feedback and information? And then for the family members, it's just to really be aware that, this is challenging. It's something that you're living with too. As a family member, you also are living with diabetes in a sense.
Yeah.
So you want to be supportive in everything that you can do, from nutrition to exercise, kind of follow the same sort of patterns,
Right.
I'd say, and be helpful that way.
That's good. So can you show us what a pump looks like? I mean, what
Yes.
people are probably unsure
Yeah,
of.
absolutely. So I work for the company Tandem Diabetes. This is, they have two different pumps. There's this one, and this pump is it's in a little case. So you can see that it's pretty small. And so people will be able to see their blood sugars on here. They'll be able to see their blood sugar trends and see when they need to give themselves insulin. And then the way that they get their insulin is through this little port right here, which is an infusion set.
Wow, so just this portion
This
goes
portion
on
right
your
here. So
body.
you put it on your stomach, on your thigh, wherever, and you can see how I just disconnected. So basically disconnecting means going like this, taking that little piece off and disconnecting and then connecting back up. So people can connect and disconnect for a shower, for swimming, for sports, for if they had to get an x-ray or something like that. This is a smaller pump.
That's pretty small.
It's
Wow.
pretty small, and this pump can actually be worn on body, so they can wear it something
I've
like
seen
that.
those, like
Yeah,
in the arm.
people wear it on the arm. Yeah, exactly. So they'll wear their continuous glucose monitor as well, and so this is also easy to connect. But they can wear this one in the shower, so very easy.
Oh wow.
To wear it on your arm, on your tummy, wherever you on
So
on
you
your
can
back.
be active, do all live a normal life.
Exactly.
Basically.
I mean, you can have this underneath your clothing and nobody needs to know it's there.
Right.
It can be very subtle. And even this can be very subtle because you can control this with your phone. So you can actually give yourself insulin from your phone.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can see that the pumps are getting smaller. You know, some of them have these two have different tubing lengths that you can use. But it's the technology that's amazing now. It's fascinating.
Right. I think the control when you're high or low in blood sugar, that it can do that for you. So
Yes.
if you're sleeping, you know, you're
don't
not
have
aware what's going
exactly.
on. So it's doing the work for you.
Sleeping is the most precarious time.
It's life-saving.
It really is. It's like I say, this is your BFF, your best friend.
Right.
forever.
Yep.
You know,
No, I
it's
can see
saving
that.
your life every day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
The
it's
type
really
1,
getting
yeah.
people to get over the hurdle of wearing something on their body. They don't want to feel like they're connected to something all the time. But honestly, this becomes like your limb. This becomes a part of you.
Well, it makes your life easier, and you're not constantly injecting yourself, because that's
Yes.
more painful. Like with this one, right? You put
One
it on your body
injection
once
for every
and-
3 days versus 4 or 5 injections a day.
Right.
Big difference in preventing scar tissue and quality of life. Honestly, your meal planning you have more options with your meal planning.
Right.
You know, when we're out to eat dinner and we're not sure when the food's going to arrive, when do I take my insulin?
That's true. Yes. Yep.
You know?
Because if you give yourself a shot and then food is delayed,
You have more options with the pumps
Right,
in
that makes
reference to
sense.
that. So yeah.
Well, Kirsten, thank you so much for being here and sharing so much information about diabetes, all types of diabetes.
My
I wasn't
pleasure.
sure, I never heard of more than type 1 and 2 and, you know,
Yes.
juvenile.
Gestational, exactly,
Yeah.
different kinds of health situations. So yes, absolutely.
This is very,
yeah.
very helpful, and I'm sure many viewers are going to enjoy this feedback, and hopefully they reach out to you if they need support, because this can be scary.
Yes.
And it's new, and obviously people don't talk about it that much. And when it's actually happening to you, it's a completely different world than when it's happening to somebody else and you think you understand it. So
Right.
thank you so much for being here. I really, really am so thankful. And yeah,
pleasure.
thank you to the viewers for watching.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks
see you
for
next
having
time.
me.